Good morning, everyone. This is Alak Verma from Centriqe, and today I'm very delighted to have Mr. Sinha, who is one of the very senior business leaders from different industries, may say, from cement industry, leading Kalyanpur Cements very successfully for last so many years. Then in the paint industry with James and Nicholson Paints, and then now with hotel industry with Hotel Moya Group, which has been there as one of the flagship hotel for last several decades. And he has not done it very successfully, but he has contributed to the state in many, many areas with Bihar Industry Association leadership, and CAI in the leadership and whatnot. So I will welcome Mr. Sansina to share his insights, how he is addressing challenges which we are facing all across the globe, and how he is really addressing the current business. So welcome, Mr. Sinha, and we'll talk about how you are addressing all these challenges.
Alakji, for having me on board, and it will be a pleasure to share my, let's say, experience and my thoughts on what shaped this industry, particularly the hospitality sector, what it is going through, and how do I foresee the future in the short term, medium term, and the long term situation, that part. Having said that, you see, generally, the hospitality sector was doing pretty well till March this year. For the last several years, we have had pretty good growth rates. And I have personal experience in looking after a hotel, which is a city hotel, and more targeted to the business traveler coming to the state capital of Bihar there. And then we have a small resort, which is situated in a tiger reserve in Maharashtra. So I can share the experience of both these two properties. Now, in case of if I go to the property in Patna, which is a business hotel, now this is one sector which has been totally, fully impacted with this pandemic. And it's not only us, it's been all over the country when the lockdown was imposed, which is end of March. They have, lifted some of the lockdown, and some cities have permitted hotels to open, but they haven't been able to really cover their cost at all because the traffic is virtually minuscule. In our case, for example, we were running something like over 70% occupancy average till about March. And post when we opened the property, partial opening, I would put it that way, in June, the occupancies hovered around 10 to 15% in the 3 weeks we kept the property open. But that wasn't enough to cover my fixed cost and other things coming in. So we decided that there's no point in keeping the rooms, empty and running the property. So we have closed down the room department definitely, and that part. Now, there were a lot of inquiries for banqueting and for meetings, small meetings and all that. But those all inquiries are technically, they were saying after something around November onwards, which is the time when people were expecting, they expect that, okay, there could be some improvement in the pandemic situation and people would start congregating and that part. But today there is a restriction of nobody can invite more than 50 people to a wedding or to any conference facility and that way. So that is a limitation, 50. And then too, you have to maintain certain SOPs, which the government has provided, that every hotel should have, sensors, they should have as much as possible contactless, situation where services are provided without much of contact. So we have adopted those SOPs, but the people have to be retrained to do that, our own staff and everything, which we have done to some extent. So that part. So talking about, if I talk about the other sector, which is the recreation, I would say leisure traffic, which we were operating there. Now there, because there was a total in Maharashtra, even today, they're not permitting opening of the resorts, except in very few places where the cases, the pandemic has been controlled to some extent. In our area, which is near Nagpur, which is a hotspot, so they have not permitted yet opening of the property. However, we are having a lot of inquiries, and people, during the monsoon, although the national park, the tiger reserve is closed, they only open the buffer area. Yet people want to come from Nagpur for a weekend, for 2-3 days holiday. So what I see, there's an opportunity of these leisure traffic from within the country going out to these national parks and I would say resorts, any sort of resorts. Earlier, these used to be weekend crowds, but now weekday is no different. So people want to go out. And if it is within driving distance of say a couple of hours, few hours from a city, so that traffic should grow and should come pretty quickly, that part. And this includes also the hill stations. Although it's monsoons, but you'll be surprised. There was when Himachal Pradesh opened up, on day one, they had 500 people trying to enter, tourists. Now, they laid a condition that you can enter the state only if you are tested negative for COVID-19. Within that test report should be not earlier than 72 hours. So that was the condition. And that you must have a hotel booking for minimum 5 nights. So they ensure that, okay, 5 nights people will stay. So there is a bit of traffic being generated in the hill stations of the country. And it is the small homestays and the small units which have 10, 15 rooms are more popular rather than the large establishment. The large establishment needs much more, operating costs to operate. So I do see that within reasonable period, the leisure traffic for the small sectors should be a little better. I'm not saying booming, but it should have a reasonable traction. However, the business travel sector, I'm not too hopeful that things will improve, at least for maybe 8-9 months. I would put it that way. It will be only, business executives who will travel if they must travel. Now it's a virtual world, so people are doing a lot of business online and things like that. So, but yet, I mean, definitely they would like to come and look at the situation in each state, the marketing department trying to contact the dealers and all that. That business should start coming in maybe a few months later, as I see. But it will be maybe, occupancy may give you occupancy of 20%, 25%, something like that. Anything below 50% or 55% is really not, viable. I'll put it that way.
So,
This is my first impression there.
right, right. And this is very interesting thoughts, Serenji. So you have seen, in many businesses, right? You have experience, in bricks and mortars, from cement industry, ends to the hospitality, all of that. And you must have gone through many situations like this crisis. Sometimes economic crisis, sometimes political crisis, sometimes this kind of health crisis. How have you addressed that? And how are you addressing currently? Because many small medium hotels, they're getting actually nervous and they're getting out of the business. They're either selling their hotels, they're saying that we can't manage, we are running in losses and we don't have fund to support. So what measures you have taken? And my background, I have been always with the technology. I've met a number of occasions with you, talked about how we can transform the businesses so that you become rock solid and you are not, rather you're fail proof in terms of addressing these kind of challenges. How you have addressed this?
You see, off the cuff, one remark I would like to put in. You're right that even in the last 15, 20 years, we have gone through many crises. But, those crises were identified. The period of the crisis when it last was pretty well, I would say, accessible. And I would say the wherewithal of attempting to, let's say, peter out or let us say, go through the crisis was a little easier because the roadmap was in place. So if you do A, B, C, D, you'll be able to probably cross the hurdle within a time frame, that part. That ABC might include certain government approvals, it might include certain banking facilities, it might include upgradation of technology, maybe certain marketing input. So we have seen that situation in both cement company as well as the other paint company. In the cement company, we had the world's largest company as our partner, and they left the company sometime in 1999. They were with us for a good 12 years before leaving it. They left because of certain reasons, and we went into a crisis. And we were trying to wriggle out of the crisis. It took us a long time to do that, doing it. But yes, we knew where we are going to go. The end point was known. The period may be a little uncertain, but at least the path was known. Unlike this time, we don't know really. In the sense, particularly for the hospitality sector, if I talk about, number one, we don't know when the cure or the vaccines would be available. Number one, if it is available, how much time will it take to get a sufficient number of people vaccinated so that they keep traveling and come around? That is a little unknown factor. How effective that vaccine would be, I don't know. So we are going to have a very tough time. And talking about how are we going to manage now, some hotels, some people, some companies have some safety net in terms of they had made profits, they had some cash reserves available, but they will last certain number of months or maybe years, something like that. It's not going to go. And borrowing money has a cost. As it is, the industry has a very heavy fixed cost in terms of employers, the employees and the rents, rate, taxes, and a power cost, which is huge there. It's more than something like 60% of our total expenses, which are fixed, and the 40% could be variable from that. Now, variable part you can take care, but the fixed part, okay, you might defer some salaries, may reduce certain staff, but India, that is also not easy. There are various hurdles to be crossed. So it's a challenge. And people estimate that something like 60% of the small restaurants may go out of business in the country, 60%, as much as that. And some people forecast something like 30 to 35% of the hotels, especially the single property hotels, or people who are owner managed, or they don't have reserves, something like 30 to 35% of the total number of hotels. There may be a smaller number of rooms, but number of hotels, 30-35% may go out of business. Now, whether they can come back into business or how much time will it take for them to come back into business depends again on the situation, how we are able to control this pandemic, how it's going to unfold itself in the coming months. So that is the situation there. But if I go back to the brick and mortar industry, there the situation is slightly different. Because with the government's emphasis on infrastructure development, things like cement, steel, and related building material activity would have a fair, reasonable growth. I'm not saying going to be booming, but it will have reasonable growth, which should be enough, sufficient for them to sustain operations. So that part, the brick and mortar part of it. But talking about automobiles, talking about other engineering goods, again, certain sectors will do it, will manage to be above water. Some will go down. So it's
viewers are really trying to understand that how they should, tackle the current situation, and how are you tackling the hotel industry or the hotel business, which you are challenged with currently, and what are the technology measures you have taken? Have you come to the digital mode of contactless check-in? And because as Centriqe, as you know, we are focused on enabling leaders like you with all those process automation, predictive customer or guest insights, and how we can enable the global travelers to know what you are doing, right? So touch upon those things, what you are doing currently in those regards.
I would say I will highlight three areas which we have focused on to meet the challenge. Number one is the new SOPs, standard operating process, in terms of guest check-in, so that there's a minimum contact. So yes, we have devised online checking and a contactless check-in system through a smartphone. You can check in yourself and take the receipts, all those things. Payment, of course, was digital anyway from that part. In the restaurant, other when you want to order something, again, it is digital. You can use a smartphone and the menu will come out. You can select what you want, and the person comes with the, comes and delivers it at your table. The restaurants, we have provided distance between tables so that, like in US also, they have done. They've converted the restaurant into something like with 40% of their original capacity in terms of occupancy. And then there are a lot of procedures we are following for sanitization and security. That part, staff security, they are checked regularly. The areas are cleaned. Better way, I would put it this, and they're testing available. We are getting our staff tested more regularly for their health and things like that. Those we have brought in. And what I see, yes, I mean, also that comes to me, the ventilation part in the hotel. Because one area where people are saying that the rooms have to be well ventilated. There must be number of air changes has to increase. So we are trying to put that in place. Certain areas we've done that, but still a lot needs to be done. Where they are talking about 3 to 4 changes an hour. Now that is something which earlier the hotel were changing our properties when they were designed. They were designed for air changes in probably 1 or 2 changes an hour. Now to double that is not going to be easy for the rooms, but the rooms, okay, don't need to change that much also. Except you can increase the temperature, don't keep it around, in centigrade terms, around 25, 24 degrees against 22, what we were trying to maintain earlier from that point. So those are some of the, I would say, operational issues. But the public area needs far more ventilation. They need far more air changes, which we have to invest into, certain infrastructure requirements, that part. Going a little forward, now the challenge is because manpower is a cost. Now manpower means how do we increase the productivity? The staff, the service part of it, and the production part of it. There's one way is, of course, mechanization of some of the production areas. But services you can't mechanize. We can mechanize to a certain extent. Order a person might place.
Right.
But the service part of it, I think the age of fine dining is going to change.
Yeah.
I don't think people will come to the table and start serving on your plate.
Right.
They will put the food on the table, then you help yourself.
Yeah.
So these are some of the changes, and a person's perception or their, I would say, the needs also would change to that extent. So those are some of the things we have to inculcate. The staff have to be retrained from that time.
So, Saranji, you mentioned about the human cost reduction, because that's the major service. I mean, in the service industry, that is the major cost, and the room revenue is a major contributor for your revenue. So now, since people are not going to come in to stay in the room, rather, and other services like outlet services that basically support the hotel business. So how do you see that people should be encouraged to come in near future from the global traveler standpoint? And have you also considered the staycation? New terms people are using about a staycation, where can I consider hotel also as my extended vacation or extended house for afford luxury hotel like Moria? Can I be offered that kind for some time, so that if I can afford reasonably well, I can come there and maybe spend time with my family for a week, where I can accommodate in my small time apartment?
Let me split that. I think the question I could answer it in 3-4 levels, 3-4 areas. If you talk about the foreign traffic, foreign business traffic coming into India, I would see that this probably would begin something early next year, say March onwards. It should start coming in, because with the China situation, China-US, I would say, friendship going on, that part. So India is expecting major business traffic to come into the country. And when it will come, I'm not too sure. Maybe 6 months, 9 months, 8 months coming. Now there, the preference the foreigners they still have is to go into a branded property.
Yes.
Right. So I think first issue would be that you should have a brand linkage.
Mhm.
If you want to attract the international business traveler, that is going to be. And among the brands, of course, there are certain leading brands, there are sub brands, and the various areas. So one will have to, try to fit in your property into those bands coming in. In so far the domestic traveler is concerned, again, I would put there are again three categories. One is the top management. They would always like to go to the best property in the town, whether it is a branded property or maybe individual property. As long as it has an image, it has a quality assurance, and people they have experienced that, and they're happy with it, so they will go to the top property. But top property means you must provide the top quality service and the wherewithal with it. So that is where, let's say, a brand like ours in Patna will try to focus, try to get the top managers, top management to come into our hotel first. That should be choice number one. And we have to take care of their requirement, their need. So the guest feedback system, which you already have running in our place, some other places, that will come into play. That, okay, what are the reactions, what are the improvements we need to do in order to keep ourselves in that bracket. Mm-hmm. The second, which is the middle level travelers, they will come to our hotel also. They also go to properties which are of similar nature, what we classify as a 3 or a 4-star facility in this country. Now, they are not so choosy, they're brand conscious. Mm-hmm. They will go, okay, if they're comfortable somewhere, they get a good rate, and they are reasonable comfort, they will go around. But post-pandemic, that might change. Mm-hmm. Because first of all, they would like to go to a place which is safe. Yes. And inverted. Yeah. So yeah. Safety, cleanliness, hygiene, those things will matter a lot. Mm-hmm. So to attract that traffic and retain that traffic, you need to provide that level of comfort that, okay, you are a safe place to stay. Yeah. That is one situation. Then the third, which are the salesmen or the travelers who come to smaller cities and also to state capitals. Now they'll be very conscious about their health. Yes. That part. So they will also look for property which are safe, but their target, for example, we talk about the tariff ranges in India. So this category I'm talking typically will be around 3,000, 2,500, 3,000 rupees a day. Yeah. Yeah. Now to provide all what we're talking about may not be so simple and easy. Yeah. The only way it can be done is what you find in Europe. I've seen, number one, stop room service. Yes. Yeah. Don't have room service. Provide a good, clean, room, which is, cleaned every day, properly, sanitized, done there. Provide one coffee shop. Yes. Where person can go and have their meal. Mm-hmm. Because room service is one area where you can have contact, may have, I would say, infection is highly possible. Mm-hmm. So that brand, that segment, we need to reorientate their